is joining me today. So hi, Jared. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Stephanie?
I'm doing good. I sometimes struggle with getting my coaching services to teachers. What about you?
Exactly. The struggle seems to be more real lately. So definitely feeling it.
Yeah. And so we have a link. You can follow along with us, add your ideas to this link because we're going to be learning together throughout this quick 30-minute session. We're going to
And we're
be
done, folks. It was great seeing you. Have a great rest of your conference. Bye.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Well, it's definitely a Friday. So again, we're going to go through just some strategies to help us. My name is Stephanie. I am a teaching and learning coordinator at CAMI. And then Jared.
I'm a digital learning coach and director of makerspaces for a school in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yay. Okay, so again, there's the link if you need it. We would love for you to join, add your ideas and thoughts onto the document. So Jared, I want you to think about which one of these images resonates more with you. Is it the first one where it kind of says like, this is what I think, but then I just say a little bit, right? Like you have all of these visions of what you want to tell your teachers or whoever, but then you just say like just a little bit of that. Or are you the next picture where you're like, my words came out fine and you're just not processing them correctly in your brain, right? So which one do you think you are?
I think it's the first one. What I think versus what I say. So I tend to think a lot about different things, but then what I say about it or what comes out of my mouth is sometimes not exactly what was in my brain. And then I have those times where you feel like, oh, I should have said more, or oh, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So we would love for our guests, those of you watching, to grab the Shapes tool. It's over on the left-hand side. You can make a vote for which one you are. But I'm the same way. I'm like, I wanted to tell you this, but then I think sometimes it's imposter syndrome that gets in the way, or maybe it's nerves, or maybe it's the time because teachers are so busy that I'm like, oh, actually, this came out. And then it causes some conflict, doesn't it?
Yes, it can.
Yeah, definitely. So again, we want to know how or which image more likely resonates with you. And so there's going to be 5 different steps that we're going to cover today. So we, one, need to understand our audience. We need to think about the structure and way that we communicate. We're going to think about the highlights and transparency, and then miscommunications or misunderstandings that also appear. So are you ready to go on this journey, Jared?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right, so on this board, I want you to grab the text box. So again, if you are watching live or if you're watching the recording, you're going to grab that text box. And I want you to think about what problems can come up when we communicate. So Jared, what are some problems that come up? This is kind of like that gripe jam when it comes to the Google coaching certification of just getting it out there. What are those problems that come up when we communicate?
Well, I think one of the issues would be assumptions. So assumptions on the part of the coach and then assumptions on the side of the teacher. And sometimes those don't always match up to what either one of you are thinking.
Yeah, for sure. I think assumptions can be really difficult, right? Like we assume they have some background knowledge or we assume that they knew that. And then there's just problems with that. Anything else you can think of?
I think channels of communication is another one where depending on the situation, like how are you trying to reach people? So sometimes, it's an email. Other times it's a quick conversation at lunch or on the way to the restroom. And so depending on how you're communicating or what the level of communication that you chose in that moment can also cause some problems too, because if it's an email, they might forget about it, or they might misinterpret it, something that you've written. But also too, like if you're just passing somebody in the hallway and it's kind of an informal, impromptu conversation, that's where then maybe sometimes you have too much on your mind and you say too much, or maybe you say too less. Those kind of things then can cause a little bit of stress and issues as well.
Yeah, and another thing when you said channels that I thought of was who is going to communicate. Because when I was a tech coach, it was like, is the principal telling the staff? Am I telling the staff? And I would just maybe assume, so going back to that assumption, oh, the principal will tell their staff. And then it never got done. And then there was, again, lack of communication because I served 5 different buildings. One year it was 12. And so again, it was just like, who is going to communicate that? And like you said, is it an email, in person, passing? I think another one could be misconceptions or misunderstandings. Like we say something, but that's not what we maybe meant.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, for sure. And also another one could be lack of clarity.
And lack of clarity can also, lead to teacher embarrassment, right? So if the communication has not been well done enough, and you go to the teacher or your principal goes to the teacher and says, it'd be really great to do a coaching cycle, people can get embarrassed by that because they would interpret that as, oh, do you think I'm not doing a good job? Is my job on the line type thing? So teacher embarrassment can be a huge one where really it's just like, no, what are your challenges that you're having? How can we help you overcome those? But I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I'm not very good with using Google Docs, or I tried Cami, or I tried this tech tool and I don't know enough about it and I'm not going to ask for help.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And emotions too. Like some days I'm in a good mood, other days I'm in a bad mood, which I feel like could go with clarity as well. My emotions. One more that I'm just going to add, and again, we would love for you to add your own, is nonverbal. Sometimes I'll be like telling someone and they give me like this blank stare, like a deer, and I'm like, did that go over well? Did it not? Or they're sitting there smiling and I'm like, oh, it sounded like you agreed, but then something happened later. I don't know. Yeah. So what we would love for you to do? Oh, go ahead, Jared.
Oh, I was just gonna say too, just as a coach, you read a lot of books, you're in a lot of sessions, and there's a lot of coaching jargon that's thrown at you, but you want to be careful of not to throw a lot of coaching jargon to the teacher because it can sound off-putting. It can also be like, what are you talking about? And so trying to, not use the technical languages as much.
Yes. And so if you see a problem here that you're like, oh my gosh, yes, just grab one of the stickers. You can go to add media. Down at the bottom is the stickers, and you can be like, this is my problem. So if we've already listed it, you can just +1 the idea, +1, yes, that's me too. Or you can add your own if you can think of some. And here are just, again, some other ones that we were talking about: the teacher embarrassment, channels of communication, ineffective feedback. So this is, again, just kind of a reminder. First, let's just spit it all out. What is kind of those issues that are causing? And now we're ready to dive in to those strategies that we were talking about earlier. The first one is our audience. We really need to understand our audience. So when we're thinking about our audience, we want to think about the user. So I like to go back to the Google Innovator Academy, Jared, where we did a lot of design thinking, right? And it was focused on the user. I don't think I've ever focused on someone else as much as I did during the academy. I'm very, very selfish, right?
But it's true, how is the user going to be able to do X, Y, or Z? So
yeah. And so what I like about that Google Innovator was we really kind of had that image. So maybe you add the image, or maybe you draw out that person. What are the goals? What's the pain points that person has, right? Because if you're able to tell them and how the district initiative is going to relate to their pain points, you're going to have more buy-in. Okay, so again, think about their bio, their needs, their personality as well. Anything else with the user?
I think really kind of for me personally, diving into their pain points as kind of as the ticket in the door is where I go. Like, what are your challenges? What is causing you stress? And then going into, okay, well, what are your goals? What would you like to see happen in a perfect world? I was asked this question the other day myself. In a perfect world, what would you like to see? And then going in from there, what are their needs? Personality is also a big one. So there are some people where, as the coach, you can be more dominant, and then there's situations where, as the coach, you need to take a back seat and just kind of let the teacher come to their conclusions and things.
Yeah, in this talk, I don't know if you remember it, Jared. This talk by Stephanie Rothstein changed my life. Can We Talk EDU? It talked about personality tests and how you can communicate with people that are different than you. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to just add that video off to the side if you're looking for a little enrichment activity to learn more about personality. Awesome. So now we're going into steps 2 and 3, which is that structure and highlighted. And now we really need to figure out our communication style. And what I find really interesting, because I'm a list person, I really love, like, you can look at my nice little binder here, my to-do list. I color code right as I finish my list. And our brains are not wired for a list of information. So it was really interesting. There was this study that was done. And during this study, somebody listed out like a shopping list. The person could only recall about 4 of the items on the list. Okay, it had about 15 items.
That's me. That's how I feel.
Yeah. However, when the list was given in a story, the person remembered about 10 of the items. Isn't that crazy?
It is. It is.
How do we communicate to teachers? Do you think it's by list or by stories?
I think it's by story because you're going to remember it better. Mm-hmm. So, you can relate to it. You can have empathy for it. And so that to me just sticks in your brain more than just like, okay, this teacher needs 1, 2, 3, 4. And then too, like telling a story, why we should be doing something or why you should want to try something. You do want to tell a story about it. I know I had an administrator years ago that was big on, sharing your story. Good, bad, ugly, share it. Because there's other people out there that also want to hear it, that can also relate to it, and also help learn, like building that community. So I'm all for storytelling. And I know for listing, I don't send me to the grocery store with a list because I will forget half of it.
Uh-oh. Don't give you my little notes either, right? You're like, this is just annoying, Stephanie, right? Like, I am a list person, but I have to remember that sometimes I do need to tell a story. Our brains are wired for stories. And so making those connections and having people be able to make those connections from the start to the end. Mm-hmm. We also want to take some ideas from advertisement. Advertisement does a really good job about communicating their products, right? We buy a lot of different things, right? Like we buy and want a lot of different products. And why is that? The way that it's advertised, right? And so these are some templates that go through how advertisement really grabs the attention of their audience. So for example, this first one is problem, solution, benefit. I don't know if you've ever used this one, Jared, but I have not until I was listening to a podcast. And basically what happens is you have some type of problem. So going back to what is that teacher's pain point that Jared was really stressing at the beginning of today's session. Thinking about solutions and how is that going to benefit them? Okay, that's it. 3 steps. Problem, solution, benefit. Right?
And that's pretty much any commercial you see, out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes
like the sun is too hot. What am I going to do? Oh, I need sunblock. What's the benefit of sunblock? I don't get sunburned. Yeah.
But what if we started with the solutions, right? Like you're not going to get sunburned. That doesn't bring in my problem. That doesn't make that connection, right? And so I think that's really important to learn because as a tech coach, there were times where I was like, here's your solutions. I didn't tell them the problem or the benefit. And so I didn't have that buy-in. Mm-hmm. But I love that sunscreen because you're like, oh, what's the problem, right? I'm gonna get burnt, it's gonna hurt, The solution is that sunscreen, and then the benefits of it, right? You're not going to need aloe or laying there on a Saturday when everybody else is out having fun.
Mm-hmm. I burn easily. That's why it came to my mind.
Yeah, for sure. Another one that advertisement usually uses. Now, again, the problem, solution, benefit. This is the most popular one that you'll see in advertisements. However, another one is the 4 I's. And what that is information, impact, invitation, and implementations. Okay, so again, 4 different steps. So, for example, this is the 3rd time you have not shown up to a meeting on time, Jared, right? That's our information that we have. The impact is, I feel like you're really not prioritizing me, Jared. You're just not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my invitation is, what could you do to show up maybe prepared for this meeting? And then because of that, we're going to be able to finish our project on time, Jared, if you do that. So again, it's kind of that, what's the information that impacts the invitation? I prefer the problem solution benefits, I think, over that one, but
yes,
you might have a different personality. I'm just not this direct.
Well, and you have to take, for me, it comes down to, I get it. Teachers are busy. They don't have a lot of time. And so while it is frustrating that you set up a meeting, you put it on the calendar, you shared it, and then they don't show up, if it becomes a problem, I tend to start to get a little bit more direct. And that then goes back to communication and the problems you have with communication, because sometimes you might come off in a way you don't intend, but you got to be direct.
Yeah, for sure. Another really great template is the what, so what, now what. So again, this kind of reminds me of the problem solution benefit, but basically like what, right? So your lesson went really well, except, you maybe didn't have some transitions. You spoke a little quicker at the end of the lesson, and there were no clear expectations for your students to do. So what? That's kind of your solution, right? And then the now what? So what are their next steps that's going to happen?
Yeah, and this is a great one for feedback. So when you have come in and done an observation or co-taught, you can really take a deep dive in conversations with this.
Yeah, because feedback can be hard. It's hard to give people feedback. So again, like what happened? I'm providing facts. It's nothing personal about that teacher. They just spoke a little quicker. So what? Right? So when you did speak quicker, your students seemed to feel rushed, right? They felt that rushed feeling. And so here's a suggestion. Here's that next time what you could do. And then prep. Prep is another great strategy, again, just to help us point, reason, example, and point. What I like about this one is it goes back to the point. So like you're kind of rinsing and repeating that point again. So for this one, you might kind of say like, the point that we're going to do this is because of this. Here's the reason. Here's an example. And then this is why we're doing it again. And then apologies. Do you ever struggle with saying sorry, Jared?
I do, because there are times where I have accidentally, hurt somebody's feelings, and you have to apologize for it, even though sometimes you may feel like maybe you were in the right. You got to swallow your pride sometimes and come back to that teacher, because it's all about relationship building. And so, if you're willing to apologize, admit that you were wrong, it does ease tensions and brings people back around.
Yeah. And so again, sometimes we do just screw up, and we need to take ownership of that. And what I've learned working through Cami is when I first started here, I was used to kind of like covering up my mistakes, because that's just what everyone did in my old district. I felt like, or blame other people. Where I started to work at Cami, and some of the people were just like, oh, I'm sorry, that was my fault. And I was like, huh? Like what? And so this is something that I've just learned to work on due to the culture that I'm in. But there's 3 A's to an apology. So first, you're going to admit what you did to hurt the other person, apologize, and then you aim to do better. There's no blaming. There's no pointing other fingers. It's just, hey, this is what I did in the communication process. This is where I screwed up. Here's me apologizing. I'm sorry, right? And then this is what I'm going to do different next time. And you actually follow through with that aim to do better.
And that's hard to do, especially, especially to other adults, even in front of students, because teachers don't want to look like they've, done something wrong or made a boo-boo. And you're right, you try to cover it up in some form, but this is the best way to do it. I do like this one, the 3 A's to an apology.
Yeah, because you are going to mess up, but the better that you communicate, the more often you practice it, you're going to get better at it, but you are going to make mistakes. And so being able to just take ownership and not blame anybody for it is going to, I think, show that you're really trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then transparency. This is where we're building trust, credibility, and rapport with our colleagues. So some strategies that I like to think about is just getting to know each other. When Jared, shares something with me, I trust him more. I'm more transparent with him. When I can share a struggle or listen, there's that connection right there. We're also able to be emotional, connecting, right? We can tell a story of how we also failed in our lessons, or this is a time where I didn't have great classroom management. And so we can be emotional, share those strategies and share those struggles with our teachers.
And don't be afraid to spend a good bit of time in the get to know you part of it, because sometimes, and again, life is busy, school is busy, and so you feel rushed because you gotta get the coaching cycle started, you gotta try to do all these things, but if you truly don't get to know that person, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes throughout the process. But if the relationship is not strong enough, you're going to be doing a lot of apologizing. You might lose credibility. And so it's just spend a lot of time in there. I like to find out what teachers' favorite candies are, favorite food, coffee, and try to bring those in and spark those conversations to really get to know them. Because as a coach, you are going to be emotional. You're going to share stories. And if you haven't built that relationship, it's not going to stop that teacher from going, Stephanie, you're not going to believe what Jared just shared with me. Like, what a moron. I'm not doing this coaching cycle stuff with him. Like, so try, yeah. I like to spend a lot of time to get to know. And I know it in the real world, it is hard and you're trying to move quickly. But the more you can, the better off everything else will be.
And what I love right here is it says, be interested, not interesting. You want to be interested in that other person, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want to be that interesting person and be all about you. You really want to be that active listener and get to know the other people.
And that's a skill. And that's a skill I'm still working on after all these years. Because there are times where you get on tangents and you start talking and then you realize after the meeting's over, it's like, I spent way too much time talking. I need to go back and listen more.
Yes. And results, we want to share them, even if they're bad, even if they're good. We need to be transparent no matter what the results show.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we need to educate. Okay. So if there is an idea, we need to explain, how is it going to work? What are the benefits and how does it compare to other ideas? So again, educating and again, using one of these strategies can really help you. My favorite, again, is that problem solution benefit.
Well, and also being transparent. One of the things, you remember during the Innovator Academies is don't be afraid of failure. Like when you fail, ring that bell, celebrate it, because you learned, you were educated through that process. And so, and two, if you share those failures with colleagues and other coaches, it only makes you better because then everybody can come and share their learning experiences.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so misunderstandings. Now we're going to learn about conflicts because they're going to happen, right? Those misconceptions, those misunderstandings, they are going to happen. Conflict is going to take place. So right here, there's different conflicts. Which one are you, Jared? I am going to be the avoiding one. This is me.
For me, it really depends on the person and the situation. So, there are certain situations and certain people where avoiding is where I tend to go. But I want to say, if I'm really working with somebody and the relationship is there, then I'm more on the collaborative compromising side of things.
Okay.
Maybe can be a little too accommodating. But for me, it's kind of like, it just depends on the person and the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. And so right here are the 5 conflicts that we were talking about here. And I want you to just kind of think about which one is you. Okay, so the accommodating one, this one will set aside their own wants, right? They might put away their needs and focus on others. So sometimes they're going to say, okay, teacher, you win. We're going to do what you need to do, right? I love down here, it tells you when to use it. Okay, so you can pause the video, you can look at this document and just kind of pause, reflect. But this can be really helpful to know when do you maybe use that conflict management style. Avoiding, this is me. I ignore situations when there's conflict. I'm like, okay, let's just ignore this and steer clear of it, right? Compromising is when you're trying to find a way to see both sides. Collaborating.
I'm it's just funny because I'm like, as you look at this stuff, I'm thinking of people that I've coached or administrators that I've tried to avoid. It's all kind of. I had a teacher on a coaching cycle. It was like nothing was working, and it got to the point where you're trying to avoid. Like, oh, how can I get out of this one? Because I know whatever strategy, it's going to crash and burn, and and it's just it is. But you do get and that's one of the neat things about coaching cycles, and when you're really getting into it and helping a lot of people. People will say to you, well, you are more accommodating to Miss Howell than you are with me. And it's like, well, because I was meeting the needs that she had. Your needs are different. Mm-hmm. And so I'm doing a little bit more, competing with you than accommodating. So, having this graphic is going to be a big, big help.
And I think, too, that you need all 5 conflict management strategies, right? It depends on the situation. Avoiding, I should use it when the conflict is meaningless. When that conflict doesn't matter, that's when I need to avoid the situation. However, when we're reaching a solution and it's more important than the solution itself, right? So when I'm working with other people, or I need a temporary one, compromising might be the right fit. Collaborating is when we're finding a solution and we are trying to kind of help or support all parties involved. It's a win-win situation. And so again, this is when the relationship is more important to me than the fight. There's also that competing where you're like, I am going to win no matter what. This is important. You don't want to give in when you're right. Mm-hmm. When you're right and when you want your morals to actually follow through. So again, you need all 5, but again, we usually go more towards one. So think about how is it that I can build and get stronger and speak up when I need to speak up. Yeah.
And seek out the people that can help you with that. I had a really good administrator that I could come to and go, this is the conflict I'm having with so-and-so, what can I do? And so, you as the coach, having those people that you can confide in is also very important.
Yeah, exactly. And so how do we get better? We repeat, reflect, and we get feedback, just like Jared was talking about. We find those people that we can trust. Hey, Jared, how do you think that conversation went? Can I role play with you? Can I explain what happened? And you get feedback, right? Mm-hmm. So again, repeat, reflect, feedback. You keep repeating. I know it's a struggle, but the more that you do it, the better you're going to get. And then go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm one of those people that always avoids role playing, but it is very important to role play.
It is. So what I want you to do is I want you to practice. So here, you can pause the video and spend as much time as you need to, but a coworker is late to a meeting, okay? Or your problem is you want to start a coaching cycle of station rotation. Maybe the teacher is not interested. A teacher is asking for feedback. So you're going to pick one of these and practice what we talked about in each of these 5 different steps. Think about your user. Think about the strategies. Think about the misconceptions or the misunderstandings with conflict management. But this is a space for you to practice. If you need feedback, let us know, and we can definitely provide that feedback to you. But thank you so much for joining us and learning how to up your marketing for coaching.
That's right. And like Stephanie said, don't be afraid to reach out if you have any questions or need somebody to bounce ideas off on.
yeah, so right here is our contact information if you need anything. Again, it's really getting to know that person and building those relationships. That's my like main tip, and I'm pretty sure that's Jared's too.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great day.